Jason did not expect a single afternoon in Dallas to shatter his understanding of himself. He didn't expect a family festival, something he only attended because a colleague insisted, to hit him harder than every failure he'd been hiding from. He showed up tired, distant, moving through the crowd with the blank stare of a man who had spent too many nights replaying past mistakes. But everything changed in an instant. A burst of laughter lifted from the field ahead, 3 children racing across, the grass, chalk dust on their hands, joy spilling from their voices. They didn't notice him. They didn't know him. They were simply living, carefree, and bright. What stopped Jason cold wasn't the sound. It was their faces. A little girl with soft curls bouncing as she ran. A boy with determined eyes and a familiar stubborn spark. Another girl with expressive features that matched memories he thought were buried. Jason froze mid-step, breath ripped from his chest. His vision blurred, not from the sun, but from a recognition that hit so deep it felt physical. These weren't random children. They were mirrors, living reflections of the man he used to be, the man he tried to outrun, the man he wished he had been years earlier. His throat tightened. His heartbeat thrashed against his ribs. He tried to blink the truth away, but the more he looked, the clearer it became. Mia, Matthew, Madison. He didn't know their names yet, but he knew they were his. His knees nearly buckled. One hand shot to his chest as if trying to steady something breaking inside. The laughter of the children, pure, full, innocent, felt like it reached inside him and ripped open every regret he'd buried. This wasn't a small realization. It was a blow. A collapse. All the years he spent climbing social ladders. All the pride he wrapped around himself like a shield. All the choices he made from fear and ego instead of heart. All of it slammed into him as he watched those children chase each other across a patch of Texas grass. They didn't know the man who created them. They didn't know the man who should have been there when they opened their eyes for the first time. They didn't know the man who abandoned their mother on a day she deserved everything good. And worst of all, Jason didn't know them either. He swallowed hard. The world tilted. His palms grew damp. He backed up a step, then another, trying to make sense of the truth that refused to soften. The moment he realized they were his entire past struck him like a force he wasn't prepared for. He remembered the chapel, the music, the white roses, Lauren standing at the door, ready to walk toward him with trust so pure it humbled him. He destroyed that. He walked into her wedding holding the arm of the one person Lauren should have been safe around, Phoebe. He didn't just break Lauren's heart, he crushed her dignity in front of everyone she loved. And now he was staring at the faces of the children he abandoned without knowing, children who carried pieces of him with unmistakable clarity. Jason's knees gave out. He sank onto a nearby bench, hands covering his face, breath unsteady, chest aching. Guilt was no longer a quiet regret. It was a force that grabbed his entire being and demanded he face the consequence of a choice he made 4 years earlier. Family, the narrator asks gently. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply, only for them to break you in ways you still feel years later? Have you ever been blindsided by someone you believed would protect you? Or have you discovered blessings in places you never wanted to look, blessings that grew out of pain you didn't deserve? These questions aren't for sympathy. They are an invitation to connect with Lauren's world, a world shaped by loyalty, culture, faith, and the strength of Black womanhood that carried her, even when her heart cracked open. Jason didn't walk out on Lauren quietly. He didn't end the engagement respectfully. He abandoned her publicly, at the altar, with her best friend on his arm. No explanation, no remorse, just a decision rooted in ego, fear, and the hunger for validation that wealthier circles fed him. He left her standing in a room full of witnesses. He humiliated her in a moment meant to honor her. He traded real love for shallow ambition. And now, years later, he stood in the middle of a cheerful community event, staring at 3 children who carried his smile, his eyes, his energy. This wasn't coincidence. It was consequence. The wound Lauren carried wasn't small. It reshaped her life, her dreams, her identity, but it also gave her the strength to build something beautiful, something Jason had no idea existed until this moment. Should a man who shattered a woman's life be allowed to step into the lives of the children he abandoned without knowing? Can redemption exist without accountability? Can a person repair the pieces they didn't know they broke? These questions aren't meant to judge. They are the heartbeat of this story. Because this journey isn't simply about Lauren and Jason reconnecting. It's about boundaries, healing, accountability, change, the difference between forgiveness and access, and the reality that some people grow, but not everyone gets their old place back. As Jason stares at the children, a flash of memory cuts through his mind sharply. Lauren standing at the altar years earlier, bouquet trembling in her hand, eyes searching the room for a man who never showed. He remembered the way the crowd turned. He remembered the gasp when Phoebe stepped through the chapel doorway beside him. He remembered Lauren lifting her chin, refusing to crumble in front of anyone. The woman he left behind didn't fall apart. She walked away with dignity that still haunted him. The hook lands here. Welcome back to Mr. Gerald family, where life's most powerful lessons come wrapped in unforgettable tales. If you're new to this family, thank you for joining us. Please hit the subscribe button because it helps us share stories like this on YouTube. Before we dive deeper into this story, please like this video, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe so YouTube pushes this story out to more amazing viewers like you. The moment Lauren stepped out of the chapel, away from the murmuring crowd and the stunned faces of guests who didn't know whether to follow her or look away, she felt something inside her fold quietly. Not break, not collapse, but fold. She walked with steady steps because shaking would have given her pain too much power. She kept her chin lifted because lowering it would have invited pity she didn't want. Her body moved on instinct, guided by the dignity her upbringing placed deep within her bones. Outside, the Texas sun hit her shoulders. People rushed after her, some calling her name, others whispering about what they'd just seen. She heard none of it clearly. Her mind was too still, too shocked, too focused on keeping herself upright. Her mother reached her first, wrapping a gentle arm around her while saying nothing at all. The silence wasn't cold. It was protective. Lauren leaned into her mother without collapsing, letting her presence hold the space where her heart should have been. Behind them, her aunties surrounded her like armor, women who had seen heartbreaks, raised children through storms, and understood that moments like this could turn a person into someone new. One aunt pulled a shawl around Lauren's shoulders, as if covering her from the shame that wasn't hers. Another whispered, "Baby, breathe," while rubbing her back. No one asked questions. No one demanded explanations. They simply held her, letting her borrow their strength until hers returned. Lauren didn't cry that day. Not in the car ride home. Not when she sat quietly at her mother's kitchen table. Not when her cousins tried to make her laugh, hoping to loosen the tightness in her chest. She felt hollow, but not defeated. She felt wounded, but not destroyed. The humiliation burned, yes, but deeper than that was clarity. Jason had shown her exactly who he was. Phoebe had shown her exactly what loyalty meant to her. And Lauren had shown herself that she had the capacity to walk away from devastation without letting it swallow her. For days, she moved through life quietly. People from church sent meals. Neighbors dropped by with warm hugs and whispered prayers. Friends came to sit with her even when she didn't say a word. Her community refused to let her fall into isolation. But the nights, those were the hardest. In the quiet, when she lay staring at the ceiling, Lauren felt a sharp ache behind her ribs. She replayed the aisle she never walked, the man who never waited, the friend who never acted like a friend. She wondered how long it would take for her body to loosen the grip of betrayal. One evening, a thick wave of nausea pushed her out of bed. She grabbed the sink, breathing through the sudden sickness. Maybe it was stress, maybe exhaustion, maybe the weight of everything finally catching up. But the feeling didn't go away. By the third morning of waking up queasy and lightheaded, she called her cousin to drive her to a clinic. Her body felt unfamiliar, and she needed answers. The clinic waiting room smelled faintly of disinfectant and lavender candles, a strange combination that somehow made her calmer. She sat with her hands clasped, tapping her thumb nervously against her knuckles. When the nurse finally called her in, Lauren followed slowly, still unsure what was happening inside her. The nurse was warm, older, with a soothing voice that reminded Lauren of the women from her church choir. She asked gentle questions, took samples, checked vitals, and hummed softly while noting information on her clipboard. A few moments later, she returned, her smile wide and glowing. "Sweetheart," she began, placing a hand softly over Lauren's. "You're expecting—" Lauren blinked. She wasn't sure she heard correctly. The nurse chuckled lightly. "You're pregnant, darling." Lauren let out a small gasp, not of fear, not of joy, but of sheer surprise. Then the nurse added something that made the room feel suddenly brighter and heavier all at once. "Not one, not two. You're carrying 3 babies, triplets, 3 heartbeats, 3 lives, 3 futures tied to hers." Lauren covered her mouth with both hands, tears finally spilling over, not from sadness, but from an overwhelming rush of purpose she didn't know she was ready to feel. The nurse squeezed her gently. "You're going to be an incredible mother," Lauren cried softly, letting the truth settle into her bones. She wasn't alone in the world. Life, unexpected, complicated, precious life, was growing inside her. After leaving the clinic, she sat in her car for several minutes, hands resting on her stomach, her breathing slow and steady. Everything she thought she lost had been replaced with something she never imagined. She whispered to her future children, "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." That night, she stood in front of her bathroom mirror, looking at the reflection of a woman who had survived her worst day and discovered her greatest calling. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she whispered, "I will give you love. I will give you stability. I will protect you, and I will never let my heartbreak define your life." Then she made the decision with quiet certainty. She would not call Jason. She would not call Phoebe. She owed neither of them access to her heart or her future. Her children deserved peace, and she would build that peace with her own hands. Her vow was simple, powerful, and final. The weeks after Lauren learned she was carrying triplets were a blur of exhaustion, nerves, and determination. Her body felt heavier, her emotions sharper, her responsibilities greater than anything she had ever held. But despite the fatigue that clung to her day after day, she kept moving because 3 tiny heartbeats depended on her. Her mornings began with slow steps to the kitchen, where she tried to eat, small meals to ease the nausea that had become her constant companion. Some days, she barely made it through without holding her stomach in discomfort. Other days, she pushed through on pure willpower, telling herself, "My babies need me steady." Her aunties rotated visits, never letting her handle too much alone. One cleaned her apartment. Another brought soups and herbal blends passed down through generations. A cousin learned how to install baby cribs and spent weekends assembling them while humming old gospel tunes. Their presence didn't erase the challenges, but it softened the edges of the hard days. Still, pregnancy with triplets was no easy path. She struggled with shortness of breath, swelling, cravings that came out of nowhere, and exhaustion that rolled over her like waves. Nights were the hardest. She couldn't lie on her back for too long, and turning over felt like repositioning a mountain. But every time discomfort pushed her to tears, Lauren placed a hand over her belly and whispered, "We're in this together." While Lauren navigated her new reality with grace, Jason was living an entirely different life, one built on appearances, wealth, and the illusion of success. After the wedding catastrophe, he and Phoebe slipped easily into Dallas's elite spaces. Parties on rooftops overlooking city lights, fundraisers filled with designer gowns and tailored suits, brunches where people discussed luxury vacations more than their actual lives. From the outside, they looked like a rising power couple. People praised their style, their connections, their potential. But behind closed doors, cracks appeared early. Phoebe criticized Jason over the smallest things: the tie he chose, the restaurant he booked, the way he greeted her friends. She corrected him in front of people, masking disrespect with a laugh. Jason told himself it didn't matter. He told himself she was simply direct. He convinced himself her attitude was normal for wealthy circles he desperately wanted to belong to. He ignored the warnings in her tone. He ignored the emptiness he felt even when she stood beside him. He ignored how long it had been since he felt truly comfortable with someone. Phoebe controlled their social calendar. She controlled what he wore, where he invested, who he spoke to, and even how he presented himself at parties. She knew exactly which people were worth impressing and which ones weren't. She often reminded Jason how lucky he was to have her, a statement that left him feeling both flattered and strangely trapped. Meanwhile, Lauren's world looked nothing like theirs. Money became tight quickly. Prenatal care, vitamins, healthier food, everything added up faster than she expected. She cut unnecessary expenses without hesitation. She cooked at home. She took on extra tasks for neighbors in exchange for small payments. She accepted hand-me-down baby items with gratitude, even when pride tugged at her gently. But Lauren had something Jason never had, a community that cared. Her apartment often smelled like cornbread or chicken stew, because an aunt had delivered food to keep her nourished. Friends dropped by with grocery bags, insisting she save her money. Older women from church sat with her, offering advice that came from decades of raising children. "You'll be tired, but you won't be alone," one said, brushing Lauren's hair gently. That support carried her through the tough days. But she still had her own battles. Some nights, she sat on her couch staring at photos from happier times, pictures of her and Jason laughing, her and Phoebe hugging, memories that now felt like someone else's life. She didn't cry over them anymore, but she allowed herself to feel the sting long enough to acknowledge it. Then she put the pictures away for good. She couldn't build her future while holding pieces of her past. As her belly grew, her responsibilities grew too. She knew she needed additional income. Her job wasn't enough, especially with 3 babies on the way. That's when she remembered how. People always praised her cooking, the flavors she created effortlessly, the warmth her food carried, the comfort people felt when they tasted it. So one quiet evening, after struggling to fall asleep, she sat up in bed and whispered, "Maybe this is how we start." Lauren began cooking small meals for people in her neighborhood, dishes rooted in tradition, slow-cooked with love and intention. Word spread quickly. People came back for seconds, then thirds, then placed orders for their friends. She didn't have a business plan. She didn't have fancy equipment. She only had skill, purpose, and the desire to provide for her unborn children. At the same time, miles away, Jason was beginning to feel the pressure of maintaining a lifestyle he barely understood. Phoebe's spending habits expanded far beyond what he could afford. Luxury bags, new dresses for every event, high-end spa appointments, all charged to his accounts without hesitation. When he tried to talk to her about budgeting, she rolled her eyes. "Don't embarrass me," she told him coldly. "People expect us to look a certain way." Jason swallowed his concerns. He didn't want to argue. He didn't want to lose his place in the world Phoebe introduced him to. So he kept quiet, even when he felt a growing emptiness in their apartment, a space that felt more like a showroom than a home. While Jason was sinking into financial strain and emotional numbness, Lauren was rising through struggle. She attended every prenatal appointment with cautious hope. She learned how to manage fatigue. She wrote a list of names for her babies. She kept a notebook of recipes she hoped to turn into a menu one day. And though her journey wasn't easy, it was steady. Every challenge came with a lesson. Every lesson pushed her closer to the woman she was becoming. She still didn't tell Jason she was pregnant. She still didn't consider calling Phoebe, not out of bitterness, but because she needed to build a life free from the chaos they created. Lauren had 3 babies to prepare for. Jason had a world collapsing slowly around him. 2 lives moving forward in opposite directions, destined to collide again, but only when the universe was ready. Lauren's belly grew faster than she expected. By her 7th month, her body felt stretched across 2 worlds, the woman she had been and the mother she was becoming. The weight of triplets made every step deliberate, every breath deeper, every emotion sharper. Yet through it all, she remained steady. Her community refused to let her face pregnancy alone, and she refused to let fear control her future. The night her water broke came without warning. She had just finished cleaning up her kitchen after preparing a large tray of cornbread for a neighbor when a sudden pressure rippled through her stomach. A warm sensation followed, and she gasped, bracing herself against the counter. Her breath quickened, her heart racing. She whispered, "Not yet. Please, not yet," even though she knew the babies would come when they were ready. Her aunt, who happened to be visiting that evening, rushed in immediately. "Lauren, baby, it's time," she said, grabbing her purse and keys with practiced urgency. Lauren nodded, gripping her belly as another contraction hit, stronger than the first. The drive to the hospital felt longer than it was. Every bump in the road sent a wave of pain through her. Lauren breathed through it, focusing on the rhythm of her heartbeat. Her aunt coached her calmly, reminding her that she was strong, that she was ready, that her babies were blessed. The moment they arrived, nurses rushed her into a delivery room. Bright lights, bustling footsteps, doctors asking questions. It all blurred together. But Lauren stayed centered. Her hands rested on her stomach, grounding herself in the truth she had carried for months. These babies were hers. They were her purpose. Her turning point. Hours passed. The pain intensified. Sweat rolled down her temples. She gripped the bed rails as another contraction tore through her, determined not to lose focus. Her family waited just outside the door. Their whispers and prayers seeped through the walls, steadying her spirit. Finally, the doctor announced, "Lauren, you're ready. Let's bring your babies into the world." Her heart pounded. Fear and hope collided inside her chest. She closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, and pushed with everything she had. The first baby arrived quickly, a girl with soft cries that filled the room like music. The nurse lifted her gently and said, "Your daughter is perfect." Lauren's breath caught. A tear slid down her cheek. That was Mia, gentle, tender, born with a softness that calmed the entire room. Minutes later, another contraction surged. Lauren braced herself again, pushing with determination. The second baby emerged, a boy, louder, stronger, announcing his arrival with a fierce cry. "That's your son," the doctor said. "He's full of energy." Lauren couldn't help but laugh between tears. That was Matthew, her fighter, her spark, the heartbeat that kicked her awake at night. The final baby took a little longer, but when she arrived, she opened her eyes. Immediately, looking around as if she needed to see everything at once. Her cry wasn't loud, it was confident, demanding attention. "Here's your second daughter," the nurse said gently. "She's curious already." Lauren knew instantly. Madison. 3 babies, 3 blessings, 3 new reasons to rise. As the nurses cleaned and wrapped them, Lauren stared at the ceiling, her chest rising and falling in relief. She had done it. She had entered motherhood through fire, strength, and grace. Her body trembled from the effort, but her spirit felt unbreakable. A nurse placed all 3 babies into her arms. The weight of them, tiny but meaningful, rested against her chest, and something inside her shifted forever. They were so small yet so powerful, so new yet already connected to her in ways no betrayal could ever destroy. Her aunt whispered from the doorway, "You're a mother now, Lauren. Look at what God has given you." Lauren gazed down at the triplets, studying their faces closely. Mia's peaceful expression, Matthew's clenched fists, Madison's wide, curious eyes. She whispered their names softly, one by one. Mia, gentle strength. Matthew, my reminder that every challenge can be faced. Madison, my bright, bold star. Their names weren't random choices. They were declarations. They were hopes she spoke into existence. As they lay against her, breathing in synchronized rhythms, Lauren felt a new identity take root inside her. She wasn't just recovering from heartbreak anymore. She wasn't just surviving betrayal. She was transforming. This wasn't about proving anything to Jason or Phoebe. It wasn't about revenge or regret. It wasn't even about healing from the past. This was about rising, for herself, for her children, for the life she was determined to build. Her vow, once whispered into darkness, now bloomed into purpose. "I will protect you," she whispered to the triplets. "I will give you love. I will give you stability. Everything I build from this moment forward will be for you." She pressed a kiss to each tiny forehead. Her mission began in that hospital room, with 3 new lives resting against her heart and a future waiting to be shaped by her hands. Lauren didn't know how much work lay ahead. She didn't know the nights she would spend awake, the sacrifices she would make, or the strength she would need to gather again and again. But she knew one thing with certainty. She was ready. The first weeks after bringing Mia, Matthew, and Madison home were a blur of feeding, schedules, diaper changes, and short naps that never lasted long enough. Lauren barely had time to sit before one of the babies cried again. Nights blended into mornings, and mornings rolled into afternoons without pause. Her body was tired, her mind stretched thin, yet her heart stayed steady because every moment reminded her why she fought so hard. Still, bills didn't care about exhaustion. Formula didn't pause for fatigue. Diapers didn't hold back simply because she needed rest. Lauren knew she needed a plan, something steady, something she could build from home, even with 3 newborns, something rooted in what she already did well. Food. Her cooking had always connected people. It carried the warmth of her upbringing, the depth of her family's traditions, and the flavor only time and patience could produce. Friends joked that her seasonings were prayers in powdered form. Church members always requested her dishes for gatherings. Neighbors asked her to teach their children simple recipes. Late one night, rocking Mia in her arms, she whispered, "Maybe this is how we make it." The idea settled into her mind with gentle certainty. She didn't have a restaurant yet. She didn't have investors, or a storefront, or fancy equipment. But she had recipes, skill, and determination. And sometimes that was enough. Within 2 weeks, she organized her first pop-up stand. Her cousins helped design a simple handwritten sign that read, "Lauren's Home Kitchen, comfort food for the soul." It wasn't flashy, but it was warm, honest, and true to her identity. She chose a busy weekend market in her neighborhood. People gathered there for fresh produce, jewelry, handmade crafts, and a sense of community. It was the perfect place to begin. She woke at dawn to prepare trays of food, slow-cooked chicken seasoned the way her grandmother taught her, macaroni coated in, rich cheese, rice infused with deep flavor, greens simmered with smoked seasoning, and cornbread that melted in your mouth. By the time she set up the stand, with the help of her aunties, who insisted on coming along, the air already carried the scent of her cooking. At first, people walked by curiously. They glanced at her food, then at her babies sleeping peacefully in their stroller behind the table. Lauren offered small samples with a smile so gentle it made people pause. The first customer took a bite of her chicken, closed his eyes slowly, and immediately said, "I want a full plate." Word spread fast. Soon, a small line formed. Then a longer one. People returned with friends, saying, "You have to try this." Others began sharing photos of her food on social media, praising the flavors and the comfort they felt in each bite. By midday, she sold out. Her aunt hugged her tightly. "Baby, you did that." Lauren looked at the empty trays with a mix of shock and relief. "I guess we try again next weekend." But next weekend wasn't enough. Requests poured in, messages from neighbors, church members, and even people outside her community asking when she would cook again. So she began setting up her pop-up stand twice a week, then 3, sometimes 4. Each time she returned, the crowd grew bigger. Her food carried cultural weight, not in a forced way, but in a natural, familiar way that made people feel connected. Black families tasted memories. Hispanic families found comfort in her seasonings. White families discovered flavors they'd never tried before. Her dishes brought people together without effort. Children tugged on their parents' sleeves saying, "Mom, can we get the sweetbread again?" Elders approached her with stories about meals their parents used to make, using her food as inspiration. Her stand became more than a business. It became a meeting place, a warm spot in the community where people felt welcome. But the success came with a cost. Lauren barely slept. On nights when the triplets finally drifted off, she was in the kitchen prepping ingredients for the next day. Her eyes burned constantly from fatigue. Her arms ached from carrying babies and stirring heavy pots. Her back tightened from bending over cribs and counters. But every time she felt like she was reaching her limit, she remembered her vow in the hospital. "I will build a future for you." And so she kept going. Her consistency didn't just attract customers, it attracted attention. A local blogger featured her in a short video titled, "A Mother of Triplets Feeding the Community with Flavor and Heart." It went mini viral in their area. The next week, a small business organization invited her to participate in a culinary event. Shortly after, a food critic from a Dallas magazine visited her stand without announcing himself. He tasted her cornbread, then returned later that day for another serving. Before she knew it, investors started showing interest. Some approached casually, asking about her long-term plans. Others were more direct, suggesting partnerships. A few simply left their cards, saying, "Call me when you're ready." Lauren didn't rush. She understood the weight of moving too quickly. She had 3 babies to support, and she refused to enter anything unclear or unstable. She took every opportunity as a blessing, but not every blessing had to be accepted immediately. Her focus remained on consistency, showing up, delivering quality, honoring her heritage, through her food, and creating something her children could look at one day with pride. Still, fatigue didn't disappear simply because success was blooming. Some days she felt her energy drain before noon. Other days, she moved through her tasks with robotic motions, running purely on determination. Her aunties often scolded her gently. "Lauren, you need rest." "I can't rest yet," she'd reply softly. "Not while I'm building this." And she meant it. Perseverance shaped her daily routine, and though exhaustion pressed on her constantly, the joy she felt when customers praised her food, or when investors took her seriously, pushed her forward. Every tray sold reminded her she was capable. Every repeat customer reminded her she was valued. Every satisfied smile reminded her she was building something real. By the end of that first year, her pop-up stand became a known spot in the neighborhood. Reliable, delicious, full of heart. She wasn't wealthy yet. She wasn't free from struggle, but she was rising, inch by inch, day by day. And her triplets, who once lay sleeping behind her pop-up table, were now toddlers who watched her work with wide eyes and giggles, absorbing her strength without yet understanding its meaning. Lauren was exhausted. She was stretched thin. But she was unstoppable. Her mission had begun. The day Lauren unlocked the doors to her first restaurant felt like standing at the top of a mountain she once thought she would never climb. The building wasn't huge, but it was perfect. Warm colors, wooden tables, soft lighting, and walls decorated with framed recipes passed down through her family. The sign above the entrance read, "Lauren's Home Kitchen, a taste of real comfort." Her aunties cried the moment they walked in. Her cousins cheered and hugged her. Her community gathered outside before the ribbon was even cut. Lauren stood in front of the crowd holding a pair of scissors with shaking hands. Not from fear, but from gratitude. Her triplets, now growing toddlers, held onto her legs, their excitement adding another layer of joy to the moment. "Baby, look at what you built," one of her aunts whispered in her ear. Lauren smiled through tears. "We built this," she corrected gently. The ribbon fell with applause. People clapped, shouted her name, lifted their phones to record the moment. And as the first customer stepped inside, Lauren felt something powerful settle inside her chest. Affirmation. Every late night, every early morning, every ache in her back, every tear she shed in silence had led her right here. The restaurant filled quickly. Family members served plates. Customers hugged her after their first bites. Elders blessed the space with words filled with hope. Even people who had only heard of her from social media stood patiently in line, excited to taste her food. The menu featured dishes that were familiar, comforting, and deeply rooted in culture. Flavors that made people pause mid-conversation just to savor the moment. Some closed their eyes. Some sighed happily. Some said, "This reminds me of home." During the opening week, the restaurant stayed full from noon until closing time. Lauren walked from table to table greeting people, thanking them, making sure everyone felt seen. She watched customers laugh. Families enjoy meals together. Children lick their fingers after dessert. She felt the joy ripple through the room. Her triplets danced around the staff, learning the environment that would become a foundational part of their childhood. The celebration wasn't a one-day event. It became the beginning of a new chapter. But while Lauren was rising, another story was happening in a very different part of Dallas, one that stood in sharp contrast to her success. Jason's life was shifting beneath him. Though he tried to pretend everything was fine, Phoebe had grown restless. Her interest in being seen as a power couple had turned into pressure on Jason to fund constant shopping trips, luxury vacations, and endless nights out. She criticized him for not earning enough, not dressing well enough, not knowing the right people. The more she pushed, the more Jason shrunk. He worked long hours at the company he struggled to maintain, but the money wasn't stretching the way it used to. Phoebe refused to adjust her lifestyle. Instead, she insisted he figure it out, and accused him of ruining her reputation when expenses didn't meet her expectations. "Everyone thinks we're slipping," she snapped one night, tossing a credit card onto the counter. "Fix it." Jason rubbed his temples. "Phoebe, I'm trying, but we have to be realistic." "Don't lecture me," she cut in sharply. "Just do better." She walked away, leaving him to stare at the bills piling in front of him. His savings had dwindled. His investments weren't performing well. His ties to the elite circles he once idolized were loosening because people sensed weakness, and in their world, weakness was ammunition. Phoebe, sensing his desperation, tightened her control. She monitored his spending. She planned their schedules without asking. She dismissed his worries with arrogance. She didn't want a partner, she wanted a resource. Meanwhile, Jason was spiraling into a quiet financial collapse. He hid the truth from everyone, including himself. He attended events wearing tailored suits he could no longer afford to dry clean, shook hands with people who no longer respected him, and forced smiles that strained the muscles in his face. The worst part was that he knew something was missing in his life, something warm, something grounding, something real, but he couldn't identify it yet. All he knew was that nothing felt like home. The first public embarrassment came at a charity function. Phoebe had chosen an expensive gown and insisted on sitting at a table reserved for high-profile donors. Jason, already stretched thin, wrote a donation check he couldn't cover. When the organization processed the check and it bounced, whispers spread quickly. People exchanged glances. A few stared at him openly. Someone muttered, "He's slipping badly." Phoebe heard it. Her face turned cold. The car ride home was silent for several minutes before she snapped, "You embarrassed me tonight." "I'm doing my best," Jason replied quietly. "Your best isn't enough," she said, crossing her arms. "If you can't keep up with the people I associate with, then why are we even together?" Jason didn't answer. His chest tightened. Shame clung to him like a heavy weight. He felt exposed, stripped of dignity. That night, he sat on the edge of their bed, long after Phoebe fell asleep, staring at the floor. He didn't think about himself. He didn't think about wealth. He didn't think about status. He thought about Lauren for the first time in months. He remembered her quiet warmth, her steady presence, the way she laughed without forcing it, how she believed in him without needing anything in return. He wondered what her life looked like now, completely unaware that she was thriving while his world fell apart. On the other side of the city, that same night, Lauren sat in her restaurant office counting receipts with a tired smile. Her back ached. Her feet were sore, but she felt fulfilled. Her business was working. Her customers were happy. Her children were growing in an environment built on love and purpose. Jason, meanwhile, was sinking quietly into chaos, and Phoebe was pushing him deeper with every demand. Lauren was rising into stability. Jason was slipping into crisis. Two paths moving in opposite directions, destined to meet again soon, but under circumstances none of them could ever expect. Jason never liked galas, but Phoebe lived for them. The glimmering floors, the designer gowns, the carefully curated guest lists. These were her stage. She dressed him for the event like he was an accessory, straightening his tie with sharp, impatient tugs, adjusting his collar as if she were polishing a trophy rather than touching her partner. "You need to look confident tonight," she told him. "People are watching." He nodded, even though his stomach twisted. His accounts were overdrawn, 2 credit cards were maxed out, and a recent wire transfer he hoped would save one of his investments had been delayed. But Phoebe didn't want to hear any of that. Her only concern was maintaining an image. When they stepped into the grand ballroom, Phoebe immediately aligned herself with the wealthiest group in the room. She linked her arm through Jason's and pulled him along like a prop. Her smile was wide, effortless, dazzling, the kind that convinced strangers. She was charming, while Jason knew the sharpness underneath it. A server offered champagne. Jason declined. His nerves were already tight. Phoebe took 2 glasses, kept one for herself, and handed the other to a man she recognized from a previous event, a wealthy oil investor whose pockets seemed endless. Jason noticed the subtle shift in her posture immediately. Her voice softened. Her laugh changed tones. Her eyes brightened in a way they never did for him anymore. The man complimented her dress, and she leaned in too closely as she thanked him. Jason tried to excuse it as social etiquette, but the moment dragged, stretching longer than comfort allowed. The investor whispered something in her ear, and Phoebe didn't pull away. She placed her hand lightly on his arm, a gesture Jason knew well. It was the same touch she once gave him when they first started dating, back when he still believed in her charm. Jason stepped closer, trying not to appear threatened. "Phoebe, we should greet the other donors," he suggested quietly. She waved him off without looking at him. In a minute, the investor smirked at Jason. It wasn't overt, but it stung. A silent acknowledgement of who held the attention in that moment and who didn't. Jason felt the humiliation creeping up his neck. The evening worsened from there. Phoebe kept drifting toward the investor, positioning herself beside him during group photos, laughing at every comment he made, whispering into his ear, while Jason stood alone with a drink he didn't want. People noticed. They whispered behind their glasses. They exchanged glances with raised brows. They murmured about Phoebe's behavior openly. Jason's chest tightened as he overheard fragments. Is she really doing that in front of him? She's been eyeing that investor for months. Poor Jason. That's rough. He pretended not to hear. He forced a neutral expression, but inside, something fragile cracked. The moment of complete humiliation came near the end of the event. Phoebe stood beside the investor as he spoke with a group of influential donors. Jason approached cautiously, intending to ask if she wanted to leave. Before he reached her, the investor whispered something into her ear that made her laugh, an intimate laugh, the kind she once saved for private moments. Then she walked off with him, not to another group, not toward Jason. She followed the man out of the ballroom entirely. Jason stopped in place, the sounds of conversation fading around him. The crowd didn't bother hiding their reactions anymore. Some stared, some shook their heads, others whispered with a mix of disbelief and satisfaction. It was irony in its rawest form. He once humiliated a woman publicly by choosing Phoebe. Now he was the one being humiliated by the very person he abandoned everything for. Karma didn't whisper. It struck loudly. Jason's hands trembled. His throat tightened. His vision blurred for a moment as he tried to maintain control. He walked toward the exit slowly, every step heavy with shame. People pretended not to watch him, but he saw the pity in their eyes. The same elite world he idolized now viewed him as entertainment, the man who couldn't control his partner, the man slipping socially, the man losing his grip. Outside, the cold night air hit him like a wave. He hurried to his car, fumbling with his keys, desperate to get out of sight. Once inside, he shut the door and let the silence swallow him. He didn't cry at first. He just sat there, staring at the steering wheel, trying to slow his breathing. Then it hit him. Everything. The years of trying to fit into circles that never accepted him. The sacrifices he made to chase an image. The choices that cost him real love and genuine connection. Lauren's face flashed in his memory. Not angry, not broken, but steady and strong. His chest tightened painfully. Tears finally fell, sliding down uncontrollably. He bit his lip to keep from sobbing out loud. His shoulders shook as he leaned over the wheel. Phoebe's betrayal wasn't new. The signs had been there for years, but tonight made it undeniable. The entire world saw it. He felt stripped, small, exposed. Jason stayed in that car for nearly an hour. When he finally started the engine, he wasn't the same man who had walked into the gala. A part of him had collapsed, the part that clung to appearances, to status, to a life built on everything except love and substance. He drove home alone, broken, and unaware that life was preparing to show him something even more devastating, something that would shake him deeper than any humiliation ever could. The morning after the gala, Jason woke with a pounding headache, not from alcohol, but from the emotional crash that kept him awake most of the night. Phoebe didn't return home until nearly dawn. She walked in silently, tossed her purse aside, and went straight to the bedroom without looking at him. Her indifference stung more than anger would have. Jason lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what his life had become. Everything felt hollow. He couldn't shake the humiliation from the gala, nor the realization that he had become a man who tolerated disrespect just to maintain a lifestyle he no longer believed in. Later that afternoon, a colleague invited him to a local community festival. Jason didn't want to go. He wanted to hide, sleep, or disappear for a while. But something in him whispered that a change of environment might quiet the noise in his mind. So he went. The festival was lively, filled with colorful booths. Families eating together, children running in, circles, music flowing through the air, and the smell of grilled food drifting from every direction. It was loud, energetic, and nothing like the high-class events Jason usually attended. Yet strangely, it felt more genuine. He walked slowly, hands in his pockets, watching parents laugh with their children. His chest tightened with something he couldn't name. He paused near a group of kids playing tag across the field, their laughter carrying from one end of the park to the other. Something about it pulled him in. That's when he saw them. 3 children, 2 girls and 1 boy, ran past him, almost knocking into his legs. The boy turned to apologize, but the words never came out. Instead, he blinked up at Jason with wide eyes that mirrored Jason's. Childhood photographs so precisely, it made the world around him stop. Jason froze. The boy's face, the eyes, the nose, the slight curl of his hair. It was his. Undeniably his. Jason's heart slammed so hard against his ribs he had to place a hand on the nearest post to steady himself. Before he could process it, one of the little girls ran back, grabbing the boy's hand. Her smile, soft yet spirited, resembled something familiar too. The second girl followed, her expression full of curiosity as she studied Jason's stunned face. All 3 children were light brown, with features that screamed a mixture of black and white heritage, features he had ignored once but now recognized with brutal clarity. He whispered under his breath, "No, no, that's not possible." But the truth stood in front of him, undeniable. He watched them run toward a booth decorated with warm, earthy colors and a banner that read, "Lauren's Home Kitchen, comfort food for the soul." Lauren. His stomach dropped. His breath caught. His hands trembled violently. She stood behind the booth in a simple apron, smiling as she served customers. Her natural beauty radiated effortlessly, not from makeup or expensive clothes, but from confidence, earned, steady, rooted in purpose. Her hair was pulled back, her posture straight, her presence commanding attention without trying. Jason felt something twist deep inside him, regret, longing, guilt, awe, everything mixing into something almost too heavy to bear. He moved closer, unable to stop himself. The children were now at her side, tugging at her apron and handing her napkins. Lauren leaned down, kissed each of their heads, and whispered something that made them laugh. The sight hit Jason harder than any humiliation he had ever endured. She was thriving. She was glowing. She was everything he once claimed she wasn't. Successful, fulfilled, grounded. Without him, his throat tightened as he watched her interact with her customers. She spoke warmly, smiled genuinely, and accepted compliments with humility. People lined up across the field, waiting for her food. Children waved at her. Elders hugged her. She had become a pillar of the community. Jason's eyes shifted back to the triplets. They moved in unison, helping their mother, passing spoons, wiping down small surfaces, laughing with each other, their bond clear and unbreakable. He saw himself in them. He saw Lauren in them. He saw a life he had thrown away the day he walked into that chapel with Phoebe on his arm. He took a step back, overwhelmed. His mind raced. These are my children, my blood, my future that I never knew existed. How many birthdays did I miss? How many first words? How many nights did she wake alone? Guilt surged through him so sharply he nearly doubled over. He wanted to walk up to them. He wanted to speak. He wanted to kneel and tell them who he was. But he couldn't. He didn't have the right. Not yet. Not like this. Not after everything he had done to their mother. He stood there silently, unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to understand how the world kept spinning when his entire reality had just shifted. One of the girls, Madison, looked up and caught him staring. She tilted her head curiously, studying him for a moment. Her eyes held the same boldness she had shown the night of their introduction years later. Jason felt his heart clench. He turned quickly before she could approach him. He walked away, but his legs shook beneath him. Every step felt like dragging a weight made of grief and realization. His chest tightened so intensely, he had to sit on a bench far from the crowd. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands covering his face. He didn't sob openly. He was too stunned for that. But tears escaped through his fingers as he tried to steady his breathing. The truth repeated itself over and over. Those are my children. Lauren was pregnant when I left her. I abandoned her at the worst moment of her life. She raised them alone. She built a whole life without me. He wasn't angry. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't even confused. He was shattered, completely shattered. He stayed there until the sun began to set, the festival lights glowing softly in the distance. People laughed, music played, and the smell of food still drifted through the air. But Jason sat motionless, haunted by the image of 3 children who didn't know him and a woman who no longer needed him. When he finally stood up, his face was tight with emotion. He walked away slowly, each step heavier than the last. He didn't know how he would fix anything. He didn't know how he would apologize. He didn't know if Lauren would even speak to him. But one truth followed him into the night. He could not unsee what he saw. He could not unfeel what he felt. And he could not return to his old life. He left the festival with the weight of fatherhood pressing down on him, though he had never held those children, not even once. Jason didn't sleep that night. He lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling as the festival replayed in his mind like a film loop that refused to stop. Every detail haunted him: the triplets' faces, their laughter, the way they ran to Lauren. Without hesitation, the warmth surrounding her booth, the pride in her smile. He saw pieces of himself reflected in children he had never met. He saw the life he could have had. He saw the woman he destroyed thriving without him. The shame burned so deeply it felt physical. He had humiliated Lauren publicly and never looked back. He convinced himself she had simply moved on, never imagining she carried his children. Through pregnancy, birth, sleepless nights, and early childhood, all on her own. Now, the truth sat heavy in his chest. By morning, he hadn't closed his eyes once. His mind pulsed with guilt, questions, and panic. He left the apartment quietly to avoid Phoebe's judgmental stare. The moment the door closed behind him, he let out a shaky breath. His car became his refuge, but also his prison. He drove aimlessly, ending up in front of Lauren's restaurant without fully remembering how he got there. It was early. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting soft orange lines across the sky. Her restaurant lights flickered on inside as staff began prepping for the day. Jason parked across the street, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned pale. He stared at the restaurant sign, Lauren's Home Kitchen, the same words printed above the booth at the festival. He wondered how he had lived blocks away from her success and never known. How many times had he passed this street blind to the life growing here? How could he have missed so much? Because he never looked. Because he never cared to look. Because he chose a world of status over the woman who loved him. His guilt twisted deeper. He watched silently as Lauren arrived, holding the door open with her hip while carrying a box of packaged ingredients. She moved confidently, gracefully, like someone who had learned the weight of responsibility and mastered it. Staff greeted her warmly. "Morning, chef," one called out. She smiled with genuine humility, nodding as she placed the box on the counter. Jason watched from afar, heart tightening. She looked at peace. She looked fulfilled. She looked whole. He wondered if seeing him again would disturb that peace. For hours, he sat in his car watching her flow through her morning routines, checking orders, speaking with suppliers, tasting sauces, encouraging her staff. Every small moment stabbed at him because it revealed how much she had built without him. By noon, customers flooded the restaurant. Some greeted her with hugs. Others thanked her for meals that reminded them of home. Parents introduced their children to her as if she were a local figure of comfort. Her presence carried weight, not fame but trust. Jason watched all of it with a hollow feeling spreading in his chest. He wasn't part of this world. He wasn't part of her growth. He wasn't part of their children's lives. The knowledge tore something open inside him. His guilt spiraled into desperation. I have to talk to her. I have to tell her I know. I have to ask about them. I have to try. But fear held him in place. Fear of her anger. Fear of her rejection. Fear that he had no right to want anything. He stayed in the car until the sun started to sink, casting gold light across the street. Customers trickled out. Staff cleaned tables. The restaurant began to quiet. Lauren stepped outside briefly, stretching her back. She looked tired but fulfilled, the expression of a woman carrying purpose. Jason swallowed hard. This was his chance. He forced himself out of the car before courage fled again. Each step toward the restaurant felt terrifying, like approaching a life he lost years ago. His heart pounded so loudly, he wondered if she could hear it even before he reached the door. When he walked inside, Lauren was behind the counter counting receipts. She didn't notice him at first. The soft chime on the door wasn't enough to pull her attention. He stood there silently, unsure how to breathe, speak, or introduce himself in this new reality. She looked up eventually, and froze. Her eyes widened slightly, but her face remained composed, calm, strong. The same quiet power she carried the day she walked out of the chapel. She didn't crumble then. She wouldn't crumble now. "Jason," she said, voice steady. He swallowed hard. "Lauren." The air between them thickened with years of unspoken pain. But Lauren didn't look away. She didn't tremble. She didn't step back. She held her ground with the dignity he once shattered. "What are you doing here?" she asked, tone firm but not cruel. Jason's voice shook. I saw them." His breath hitched. "I saw Mia, Matthew, and Madison." Lauren didn't blink. She didn't gasp. She didn't show surprise. "Yes," she said softly. "I know." Jason's knees nearly buckled. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her response came quietly, but the strength behind it was undeniable. "Because you made your decision very clear the day you left me at the altar with Phoebe on your arm. You showed me exactly where I stood in your life." She paused. "I wasn't going to beg you to be a father." His eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know, Lauren. I didn't know you were pregnant." She finished the sentence calmly. "No, you didn't know. But even if you did, you weren't in a place to choose us." Jason felt those words stab straight through him because they were true. Painfully true. "I want to know them," he whispered. "Please. I want to try." Lauren held his gaze for several seconds. Her expression softened, but not for him, only for the truth she carried. "I will never keep the children from knowing you," she said gently. "But don't confuse that with forgiveness. You hurt me in ways you don't understand. I rebuilt myself without you. My peace is not up for negotiation." Jason nodded slowly, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Lauren looked down at the receipts, then back at him. "You may meet them," she said quietly. "But it will be on my terms, slowly, carefully. You will respect their space and their pace." He nodded again. "Anything. I'll do anything." Lauren took a breath, steady and resolute. "Good. Then we'll start small." Silence settled between them, heavy but honest. Jason felt something shift inside him. Not hope, not entitlement. Accountability. He took one step back, then another, giving her space. Before turning to leave, he whispered, "Thank you for giving me a chance." Lauren didn't respond. She simply nodded once, firm, controlled, non-negotiable. As he walked out of the restaurant, he felt the weight of a path he had chosen. Years ago, now circling back with consequences he could no longer escape. His journey toward redemption had begun, but it wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be quick. Lauren chose her backyard for the moment that would change everything. It was a warm Saturday afternoon, the kind where sunlight filtered gently. Through the leaves and the air carried the easy hum of neighborhood life. The triplets were playing on the patio, chalk scattered everywhere, bright drawings covering the pavement. Jason stood inside by the sliding door, staring at them with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. "They don't know you yet," Lauren said quietly from beside him. "So follow my lead." He nodded. "I will." She stepped outside first, calling the children with her familiar, comforting tone. "Mia, Matthew, Madison, come here, babies." They ran toward her immediately, each one reaching for a different part of her. Mia slipped her hand into Lauren's. Madison wrapped herself around her waist. Matthew clutched a toy truck, but stood close enough to rest his shoulder against her leg. Jason watched, breath held. Their bond with their mother was pure and unshakable. He felt the heaviness of everything he missed pressing against his ribs. Lauren rested her hand gently on Mia's shoulder, before turning the children to face the man behind her. "There's someone important I want you to meet," she said softly. Jason stepped outside. His heart pounded so loudly it seemed louder than the children's laughter a moment ago. He didn't walk quickly, he couldn't. Every step felt like moving through years of regret. When he reached them, he knelt immediately. Not out of performance, but because his legs wouldn't hold him up any longer. The triplets stared at him. Madison, always the bold one, blinked with curiosity and took a small step forward. Her head tilted the same way she had tilted it at the festival when she first noticed him staring. "Hi," Jason whispered, voice nearly cracking. I'm Jason." Madison glanced at Lauren. When her mother gave a soft nod of reassurance, she walked closer. Jason felt tears blur his vision when she reached out and touched his face lightly. The same way she had once touched his cheek years later in their living room. A simple gesture, but powerful. "You look like Matthew," she said. Jason let out a shaky laugh. "I think he looks like all of you." Matthew stepped behind Mia, peeking out cautiously. Mia stood frozen, uncertainty written all over her face. She held tightly onto Lauren's hand, her small fingers curling into her mother's palm. Lauren knelt beside her. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered. "You're safe. Mommy is right here." Jason watched Mia's eyes flicker between him and Lauren. She wasn't afraid, just unsure, trying to understand a moment bigger than her world had prepared her for. Madison crouched in front of him, her eyes bright. "Are you Mommy's friend?" she asked. Jason swallowed hard. His voice trembled. "No, not her friend." Lauren didn't interrupt. She let him face the truth he had earned. Jason's chest tightened as he whispered, "I'm your dad." Time froze. Matthew stepped back a little, gripping his truck as if holding onto something familiar. Mia's eyes widened, then shifted toward Lauren again for confirmation. Lauren nodded gently. "Yes, babies," she said softly. "This is your father." Madison blinked slowly, processing the words. Her lips parted as she studied Jason again, comparing his features to her own reflection, her siblings, their mother. "You cry like me," she whispered suddenly. Jason exhaled, a broken but grateful sound. "I guess I do." He didn't reach for any of them. He didn't ask for hugs. He didn't expect acceptance. He stayed kneeling, open but patient. Matthew approached next, still cautious. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he stood in front of Jason, studying him the same way a thoughtful child examines a new idea. Matthew's quiet seriousness, the analytical spark in his eyes. Jason saw himself clearly. "Why weren't you here?" Matthew asked softly, voice fragile with honesty. Jason's throat tightened painfully. "Because I made a mistake," he said. "A mistake that hurt your mom and kept me away from you. I should have been here. I should have known. I'm sorry." Matthew didn't step away. He simply nodded once, accepting the answer for now, even if he didn't fully understand the depth behind it. Mia was last. She stayed pressed to Lauren for several long seconds, her big eyes filled with emotion she hadn't learned to name. Lauren stroked her hair gently. "It's okay to feel unsure, Mia," Lauren whispered. Finally, Mia stepped closer to Jason, just enough to examine him, not enough to reach him. Her voice quivered. "Are you going to take Mommy away?" Jason's heart shattered in an instant. "No," he said quickly, firmly, sincerely. "Never. Mommy is your home. I just want to know you. If you'll let me." Mia's gaze softened just a little. She didn't move closer, but she didn't retreat either. For a child who was cautious by nature, that was her version of acceptance. Lauren stood quietly behind them, her posture steady. She wasn't emotional. She wasn't breaking. She was proud. Proud of her children's strength, proud of her own, and proud that this moment was happening on her terms. Jason stayed kneeling until Lauren gently said, "That's enough for today." He nodded, standing slowly, careful not to overwhelm the triplets. Madison waved a small hand. "Bye, Jason." Matthew lifted his truck in a shy, symbolic gesture of acknowledgement. Mia looked at him one last time, then leaned into Lauren's side with a quiet sigh. Jason felt something new wash over him, not hope, not entitlement, but purpose. A purpose he ignored for too long. He stepped back, giving space, giving respect, giving gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered to Lauren. She nodded but didn't smile. Not yet. The children had taken the first step, but Jason had a long road ahead. Word traveled faster than either of them expected. Lauren had not posted anything online. Jason hadn't told a soul. But community life has a rhythm of its own, especially when someone is recognizable. As Lauren and someone as controversial as Jason stand in the same space. The first whispers began in the neighborhood grocery store, where one of Lauren's elderly customers told another, I saw Jason leaving her place. I wonder what's going on there. Within a day, the murmurs spread from small talk to deeper speculation. Black families who loved Lauren, supported her restaurant, and watched her raise her triplets with grace began questioning Jason's intentions. After everything he did, now he wants to come back? He better not be here to cause trouble. Does he think he can just walk in after years of silence? These weren't comments of malice. They were protective. Lauren had become a symbol of resilience, a woman who rebuilt her life without bitterness. The idea of Jason inserting himself now triggered defensive instincts. Meanwhile, in Jason's old social circle, the high-income white world he once chased, another kind of whisper started, this time directed at Lauren. So, she's letting him back into her life? Was she waiting for his money? I heard she kept the kids a secret on purpose. These comments carried suspicion rather than support. People who had never met her questioned her character, simply because Jason had been seen near her restaurant. Lauren heard some of these comments secondhand, and though she was used to criticism, this felt different. It wasn't about her food, her business, or her identity. It was about her family. Still, she kept her calm. She kept her dignity. She continued running her restaurant, serving her customers, and raising her children. But the calm wouldn't last. A problem came from someone she least expected. A jealous acquaintance, someone who had once admired Lauren's success but secretly envied her rise, decided to stir chaos. She approached one of Lauren's cousins at a local event and whispered, "You know Jason might take the kids from her, right? He's their father. And he's white. These courts listen to people like him." The cousin froze. The acquaintance continued, enjoying the impact of her words. "I mean, he's already around them. What if this is the beginning of a custody fight? What if he wants full control?" She should be worried. By the end of the day, the rumor had spread far beyond the cousin. It reached Lauren's aunties, her staff, her neighbors. People who cared deeply about her began sending messages. "Be careful. Watch your back. Jason could take those babies. Please don't trust him too fast." Word finally reached Lauren as she finished closing the restaurant late in the evening. Her hands froze on the register. Her breath caught in her throat. Panic, cold and sharp, hit her chest with alarming force. Her children were everything she lived for, everything she worked for, her purpose, her strength, her daily joy. The idea that someone might try to take them away shook her. She sat down slowly on the chair behind the counter, trying to steady her breathing. Her mind raced through memories of pregnancy, sleepless nights, scraped knees, bedtime stories, soft giggles, whispered prayers. She had been their constant. She carried them through life from the moment their hearts began to beat. She whispered aloud, "Nobody is taking my babies." Then she grabbed her phone with trembling fingers. Before she could even type, there was a knock at the restaurant door. Jason. Lauren stiffened, unsure whether to open it. But one look at his face told her everything. He already knew. Something in his expression was urgent, serious, almost fearful. She unlocked the door slowly. Jason stepped inside and closed it gently behind him, his hands raised slightly as if to show he came with no threat. "Lauren," he said, voice tight, "I heard something today, and I need to shut it down before it gets worse." Her jaw tightened. "What did you hear?" He took a steadying breath. "Someone's spreading a rumor that I'm going to sue for custody." Lauren's chest constricted painfully. The fear she'd been fighting all evening rose in her eyes. Jason saw it instantly, and his voice broke. "No, absolutely not. Lauren, I would never, ever do that to you." She stared at him, searching for truth. He stepped closer carefully, not too close, just close enough for her to feel sincerity radiating from him. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "You raised them, you protected them, you built a home. I'm not here to take anything. I'm not here to disrupt your life or claim ownership. I'm here to be present if you'll allow me. Nothing more." Lauren blinked slowly, tears gathering against her will. Jason continued, voice trembling. "You are their anchor, Lauren. You are their world. I would never tear them from the person who has given them everything." She inhaled shakily. "Rumors have weight in communities like ours. People get scared, Jason." "I know," he whispered. "And that's why I came. I'm putting it in your face before you hear it from someone else." Lauren closed her eyes briefly, shoulders relaxing a fraction. His initiative mattered. His clarity mattered, but her heart had been bruised too deeply to trust easily. "I won't panic," she finally said. "But I need you to understand something." Jason nodded. "Anything. If you ever try to hurt my children, or take them from me, I will fight with everything I have." His eyes softened. "You won't have to. Because I would never be that man." Lauren held his gaze a moment longer, searching again for hidden motives. Instead, she saw remorse, accountability, a man rebuilding himself brick by brick. For the first time, she believed him. She let out a long breath. "Fine." Jason nodded. Relief washed over his face. His posture softened, but he didn't smile. The moment was too fragile for that. They stood together in the quiet restaurant, surrounded by the scent of freshly cleaned tables and the lingering warmth of the day's meals. It felt like an unexpected peace, one neither of them saw coming, but both needed. Jason spoke again, gently. "If there's ever anything you want to ask me, anything you're unsure about, come directly to me. Don't let rumors control this." Lauren nodded slowly. "I won't." Their eyes met for a long, quiet second. Two people with history too heavy to ignore and responsibility too important to mishandle. Then Lauren straightened her shoulders. "You should go. It's late." Jason stepped back, giving her space. "Good night, Lauren." She watched him leave, her heart steady now, not shaken. Because the truth was becoming clearer. He wasn't here to repeat the past. He was here to correct it. Jason didn't waste time after the conversation in Lauren's restaurant. The moment he stepped outside and breathed the night air, he knew something had shifted inside him. For the first time in years, he wasn't moving with pride or desperation. He was moving with intention. He began showing up. Not loudly, not dramatically, not with grand gestures. He showed up in small, consistent ways, the ways that mattered. Lauren started by allowing brief visits in the backyard on weekends. She stood nearby at first, like a quiet guardian, ensuring boundaries remained intact. The triplets reacted differently each time. Madison, bold and curious, talked the most and asked him questions about everything, from why clouds moved to why adults drank coffee that smelled strange. Matthew approached with quiet interest, watching Jason's actions more than his words. He liked seeing how things worked, so Jason showed him how to fix a loose toy wheel, how to tie a simple knot, how to bounce a ball properly. Mia remained the most cautious. She often sat beside Lauren, watching her siblings interact before inching closer. Jason never rushed her, never pressured her, never tried to force affection. And because he didn't push, she slowly trusted him more. Each weekend became a little longer than the last. Lauren noticed Jason arrived exactly on time every visit, not early, not late. He never overstepped. He never asked for more than she offered. He always said thank you before leaving. Consistency began building roots. Within 2 months, Lauren allowed Jason to join them at local cafes or at the park. He pushed the swings. He held their jackets. He laughed when Madison insisted he race her across the playground. He lost intentionally but convincingly. The children noticed he was trying. Lauren noticed too. One of the most memorable moments happened at the triplets' birthday party. It was a backyard celebration filled with balloons, music, and a buffet of Lauren's cooking. Jason stood near the fence, unsure how involved he was allowed to be. He didn't intrude. But then Madison ran up to him holding 2 cupcakes. "Mommy said you can stay," she announced proudly. "But you gotta sing happy birthday." The joy that washed over Jason's face was raw, unfiltered. He didn't hide it. He joined the group near the cake table, standing respectfully beside Lauren. When they sang, his voice cracked and Matthew heard it. "You okay?" Matthew whispered. Jason wiped a tear quickly. "Yeah, buddy. I'm okay." Lauren saw it too. She didn't comment, but something warm flickered in her expression. Not romantic, not forgiving, just acknowledgement. He was doing the work. Meanwhile, Jason's departure from his old life began quietly. The more time he spent with the triplets, the more he realized how empty his previous world had been. He stopped attending gatherings with wealthy circles. He ignored party invitations Phoebe sent through friends. He stepped back from business contacts who thrived on superficial power. The first true break came when Phoebe called him unexpectedly on a weeknight. He almost didn't answer, but curiosity and closure pushed him to pick up. Her voice was sugar-coated, the same tone she once used to get what she wanted. "Jason, hey, it's been a while. I've been thinking about you." He stayed silent. Phoebe continued, "I know things got tense. I know I made mistakes. But we were good together, weren't we? Remember our trips? Our events? Everything we built socially?" Jason exhaled. That life felt distant, like someone else's memories. "What do you want, Phoebe?" he asked. She hesitated before saying, "I want us back. I miss what we had." Jason closed his eyes briefly, imagining how he once would have jumped at the chance to repair things with her. He used to crave her validation. He used to chase her world like it meant something. Now? Her voice felt hollow. "I can't do that," he said calmly. Phoebe scoffed. "Why not?" "Because I'm not that man anymore." There was a pause, sharp and cutting. Then her tone shifted, full of irritation. "Is this about that woman? The one you left? Is she manipulating you with those kids?" Jason's jaw tightened. "Her name is Lauren, and those children are my responsibility." Phoebe laughed bitterly. "So you're throwing away your life for—" He cut her off. "I'm ending this conversation. You'll regret this, Jason," she snapped. "No," he said with quiet certainty. "I regret not seeing clearly sooner." He hung up before she could respond. For the first time in years, the silence felt like freedom. Word of Jason distancing himself spread among his former circle. Some mocked him. Some tried to lure him back with business opportunities. Some assumed he had lost his mind. Jason ignored them all. His priorities had shifted permanently. The most defining moment came one weekend when Lauren allowed him to attend the Triplets school event, a small program where the children showcased their artwork. Jason arrived early, sitting at the back quietly. When the Triplets walked onto the stage with their class, Madison spotted him first. She waved so enthusiastically, the teacher had to steady her. Matthew smiled shyly, lifting his drawing for Jason to see, even though the distance made it impossible. Mia hesitated, then gave him a small wave. Small but sincere. Jason's breath hitched. Lauren watched him from across the auditorium. She saw his shoulders shake once, subtly, before he composed himself. She saw the humility, the sincerity, the transformation. After the event, Madison grabbed his hand. "Did you see my picture?" "I loved it," Jason said. Matthew tugged at his other sleeve. "Mine too." "It was amazing." Mia joined last, holding her drawing close. "This one is you, and Mommy, and us." Jason's lips trembled as he nodded. "It's beautiful." Lauren approached then, arms crossed loosely. Not defensive, just watching. The moment wasn't warm. It wasn't cold. It was real. Jason looked at her, voice low. "Thank you for letting me be here." Lauren nodded once. "You've shown up." Those 3 words carried weight. They weren't approval. They weren't forgiveness. They were acknowledgement of consistent effort. As they parted ways that afternoon, Jason realized something profound. Lauren didn't need him. The Triplets didn't depend entirely on him. Their lives were full, stable, thriving. He wasn't here to fill a void. He was here to earn a place. And for the first time in his life, he understood that redemption wasn't a plea for sympathy or a demand for acceptance. Redemption was a practice, a daily choice, a steady walk toward better. The chapter of who he had been was closing. A new chapter, one rooted in responsibility, honesty, and growth, was fully in motion. Jason's transformation didn't happen overnight, but by the time months rolled into a steady rhythm, there was no denying the change. The man who once chased status, validation, and shallow acceptance was now replaced by someone calmer, more grounded and genuinely committed to the role he should have embraced years earlier, fatherhood. Not because he wanted to win Lauren back, not because he wanted public approval, not because guilt forced him, but because he finally understood the meaning of responsibility. And because the Triplets deserved consistency. Lauren noticed it before she admitted it to herself. Jason arrived early for every weekly visit, sometimes sitting in his car reading parenting books or searching online for ways to help children regulate emotions, communicate better, or build confidence. He didn't announce this change to anyone. He just quietly did the work. The Triplets, without being told, sensed the shift. Madison was the first to accept him fully. She had always been expressive, open-hearted, and brave with her feelings. When Jason arrived, she ran up to him with a joy so natural it took him by surprise. "Daddy, guess what I made at school? Daddy, look at this drawing. Daddy, can you help me braid my doll's hair?" She said daddy like it belonged to him, and to her equally, a simple truth spoken without hesitation. Matthew followed a different pattern. He bonded with Jason through quiet activities, puzzles, toy cars, simple science experiments Lauren bought for them. They sat together for long stretches without talking much, communicating through shared focus. Jason cherished those moments deeply. Mia was the slowest to trust, but her trust grew the strongest. She watched everything. She observed how Jason responded to mistakes, how he spoke to Lauren, how he handled frustration, and how he apologized gently when misunderstandings occurred. Mia was a child who valued emotional safety, and she learned to feel safe around him. One evening, during their weekly routine, she surprised him. With her small voice barely above a whisper, she asked, "Daddy, can you read the bedtime story tonight?" Jason nearly broke. He nodded quickly. "I'd love to." Lauren stood at the doorway, watching the scene unfold. She didn't interrupt. She didn't correct the children. She didn't remind anyone of the past. She simply allowed space for growth. Co-parenting between Jason and Lauren became an unexpected strength for the children. They didn't live together, and they didn't pretend to be a couple. They had separate lives, separate homes, separate futures. But when it came to Mia, Matthew, and Madison, they were partners, calm, aligned, respectful. Communication grew between them, not personal conversations, not emotional exchanges, just practical, consistent cooperation. "Matthew struggled to sleep last night. Can you talk to him about it during your visit? Madison wants to show you her drawing. She saved it for Sunday. Mia has a school event Wednesday. Are you available?" Jason respected every boundary Lauren set. He didn't linger too long after visits. He didn't show up unannounced. He didn't expect praise. He didn't request more time than she offered. He simply proved, week after week, that he was dependable. Lauren, in turn, regained a new kind of peace. Not the peace of standing alone in independence. She had already mastered that. This was different. The peace of knowing her children had two parents who were aligned, even without being together. Her business continued to flourish. Customers loved her food. Her staff admired her leadership, and the community respected her even more now that she was navigating co-parenting publicly yet gracefully. Rumors faded. Whispers softened. People saw the truth. Lauren wasn't letting Jason in out of weakness. She was doing it out of maturity, strength, and clarity about what was best for her children. Jason's old world, his former social circle, barely recognized him anymore. He lived smaller, quieter, more intentional. He spent evenings studying parenting resources instead of attending lavish events. He invested more in character than image. One afternoon, after picking the children up from school for a museum visit, they asked him a question he wasn't expecting. "Daddy, are you going to marry Mommy now?" Madison asked. Jason froze, holding Mia's backpack in his hand. He knelt down slowly, making sure their eyes met. "No, sweetheart," he said softly. "Mommy and I are not getting married." Madison frowned. "But why? You're here all the time." "Because some things don't go back to the way they were," he explained gently. "Mommy and I care about each other, but not like that." Mia's face softened. "But you still like us." Jason pulled them all into a gentle hug. "I love you," he said quietly. "That's not ever going to change." Lauren watched from the porch as they hugged, her expression soft, not emotional, not sentimental, just proud. Her children were learning the truth without experiencing the chaos adults often create. Co-parenting didn't need romance. It didn't need longing. It didn't need a reunion. It needed balance. It needed effort. It needed emotional maturity. And that's exactly what they built. By the time the sun set that evening, Lauren realized something important. Jason wasn't trying to earn her heart. He was trying to earn his place in his children's lives. And that difference was everything. The evening air was warm, the kind that settled gently across the neighborhood, as if the day wanted to leave slowly. Fireflies blinked across Lauren's backyard, floating like tiny sparks of gold drifting through the dusk. The triplets chased them with giggles that echoed across the lawn, Madison shouting every time she spotted one, Matthew studying them carefully, Mia whispering wishes as each light flickered past. Lauren sat on the porch steps, her elbows resting on her knees, watching her children play. She looked peaceful. Not the peace of someone finally resting, but the peace of a woman who had survived storms and learned how to breathe again. Jason stood near the fence at first, giving her space. He never assumed he belonged beside her. But tonight, something unspoken seemed to pull him closer. Lauren noticed the way he watched the children, carefully, reverently, as if memorizing every sound they made. After a long moment, she patted the step beside her. "You can sit," she said quietly. Jason blinked, surprised. "Are you sure? If I didn't want you here, I wouldn't have asked." He nodded and walked over, lowering himself onto the porch with a gentleness that had become second nature since the children entered his life. They sat shoulder-length apart, a respectful distance, yet close enough to share the warmth of the moment. The fireflies continued their gentle dance, and for a few minutes, neither of them spoke. Madison shouted across the yard, "Daddy, look, I caught one." Jason smiled softly. "Let it go, sweetheart. They shine brighter when they're free." Lauren's eyes flickered toward him, not romantically, but with acknowledgement. He had grown. She could see it in his voice, his posture, the way he existed now without expecting anything in return. "You've changed," she said eventually. Jason exhaled, his breath shaky. "Life changed me. You changed me. The kids changed me." Lauren didn't respond at first. She watched Mia kneel in the grass, cupping her hands around a firefly, whispering something Jason couldn't hear. When Lauren finally spoke, her voice was soft but firm. "I'm not saying this to reopen anything. But the man you are now, he didn't exist years ago." Jason nodded slowly. "I know. And I hate that I wasn't him when you needed me." Lauren didn't flinch. She didn't tighten her jaw. She didn't look away. "That's the past," she said. Jason swallowed hard. "I think about it every day." "I know you do," she replied. "But we're raising children now. We don't have space to drown in what could have been." Silence settled between them again, thick but not hostile. It was a silence made of truth, unavoidable, steady, and honest. Jason rubbed his palms together, staring at the yard. "Lauren, I need to say something, not because I want anything from you, just because it's true." She turned slightly toward him. "I know I lost my chance with you," he said quietly. "I know there's no version of our lives where we go back, or try again, or pretend the past didn't happen. I don't expect forgiveness, and I definitely don't expect love." Lauren listened, expression unreadable. "I lost you forever," he continued. "And I accept that, completely." The words were heavy. They carried the weight of years of regret, years of looking in the wrong direction, years of wanting something shallow while abandoning something real. Lauren didn't rush to respond. She let the truth sit in the space between them. Finally, she spoke. "I'm glad you know that." Jason nodded, absorbing her words, not as punishment, but as clarity. This was reality, and he respected it. "But," Lauren continued, her voice gentler now, "I also see the work you're doing, and I'm not blind to it. You're showing up. You're steady. You're patient with the kids. You respect boundaries. You've grown into someone I'm not ashamed to co-parent with." Jason blinked, surprised. "That means more than you know." "It's not praise," she said. "It's acknowledgement, and I'll take that," he whispered. They sat quietly again, but the air felt different now, lighter, cleaner, more honest. The mad rush of past emotions had finally settled into something stable. The triplets ran toward the porch, breathless and filled with excitement. Madison leaped onto Jason's knee without hesitation. Matthew plopped down between him and Lauren, holding a jar with no lid, insisting the fireflies wanted to watch the stars too. Mia sat at Lauren's other side, laying her head gently on her mother's shoulder. Jason looked at the scene, this small, unexpected family moment, and felt something settle inside him. Not longing, not regret, just gratitude. Lauren glanced at him again and murmured, "This is what they need. Not a forced relationship between us. Just this, presence, peace, respect." He nodded. "I understand." Their eyes met once more, and for the first time since their breakup years ago, the connection wasn't strained. It wasn't emotional chaos. It wasn't a wound being reopened. It was two adults acknowledging growth, acknowledging mistakes, and acknowledging the shared responsibility they now carried. Jason breathed out slowly. "Thank you for allowing me this. You earned it," Lauren replied. The porch light flickered softly above them, blending with the glow of the fireflies. The moment felt complete, not as a reunion, but as a resolution. A new stability, a new clarity, a new foundation built not from romance, but from maturity. Lauren gently nudged Jason with her elbow. "They like you," she teased lightly. Jason laughed under his breath. "I'm trying my best. You're doing better than that," she said, eyes forward. For a split second, Jason allowed himself to feel proud, without guilt, without desperation, without expectation, just proud. The fireflies danced around them, as if celebrating something unseen. Peace after chaos, respect after heartbreak, healing after loss. It was the conversation neither of them expected, but both needed. Before we move into the final part of this emotional journey, please like this video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another story filled with powerful lessons and real human growth. Years passed with a steady rhythm, the kind that quietly reshapes a family without forcing anything. Mia, Matthew, and Madison grew into vibrant, thoughtful preteens who carried pieces of both their parents in ways neither Lauren nor Jason could have predicted. Madison kept her boldness and expressive spirit, the type of child who turned every room into a stage without trying. Matthew grew more observant, analytical, and steady. Jason often smiled at how deeply he recognized himself in him. Mia blossomed into a gentle leader, protective of her siblings, emotionally intelligent beyond her age. Their lives were peaceful, structured, balanced. Jason's presence became a normal part of their world. He attended parent-teacher meetings alongside Lauren without conflict. He supported school projects, joined weekend outings, and showed up to recitals and competitions without fail. He never pushed for more than he was offered. He never demanded space. He never interrupted Lauren's parenting. He simply existed as a father who understood the value of consistency. Lauren, in return, carried her independence with grace. Her restaurants expanded from 1 to 3, each thriving under her leadership. The triplets helped sometimes after school, wiping tables or greeting customers. Her community respected her, not because she succeeded alone, but because she succeeded with dignity. Over time, the weight of the past softened, not forgotten, not dismissed, just softened. One warm summer evening, when the triplets were nearly teenagers, Lauren called them into the living room. The moment had been on her mind for weeks, and she sensed it was time. Jason arrived shortly after. He stepped inside with the calm familiarity of someone who no longer felt like an outsider. He nodded at Lauren, then took a seat beside the children. They all knew this wasn't a normal family meeting. A quiet seriousness settled across the room. Lauren began, her voice gentle but steady. "There's something I want all three of you to understand. You're older now. You ask questions that deserve real answers." The triplets listened closely. Lauren continued, "Your father and I, our story wasn't easy. It wasn't simple. There were choices made a long time ago that caused a lot of pain. But what matters most is what we built afterward." Jason lowered his head respectfully, allowing Lauren to guide the moment. "When you were little," she said, "I protected you from certain truths because your hearts weren't ready for them. But now you're strong enough to hear them and wise enough to understand." Mia leaned closer to her mother. Madison placed a comforting hand over her twins. Matthew's brows tightened with quiet focus. Lauren took a breath. "Your father made mistakes. He hurt me deeply. He wasn't here when you were born. He didn't know you existed." The triplets looked at Jason, not with anger, but with curiosity. Jason's voice cracked before he spoke. "What your mother said is true. I made choices that came from selfishness and pride. I cared about the wrong things. I let the wrong people influence me. And I walked away from a life I should have protected." He paused, eyes wet. "If I could go back and choose differently, I would. But life doesn't let us rewrite the past. It only lets us grow, or stay the same." Matthew asked quietly, "Did you know she was pregnant?" Jason shook his head. "No, I didn't know. But that doesn't excuse anything. I should have been a better man from the beginning." Madison's eyes softened. "But you're here now." "I'm here now because your mother allowed me to earn that chance," Jason said, his voice filled with gratitude. Your mother didn't owe me anything, but she chose what was best for you. She made room for me even when I didn't deserve it. Mia glanced at Lauren. Mommy, was it hard? Lauren's eyes grew glossy with memory, but her voice remained calm. Yes, baby, it was hard, but I learned something important. She leaned forward, speaking to all three. Pain doesn't define you. What you do after the pain, that's what shapes your life. The triplets listened in complete silence. Lauren continued, and I learned that dignity is more powerful than anger, that walking away from something toxic is not weakness, and that healing doesn't always require returning to the person who hurt you. Jason bowed his head, accepting the truth with humility. Lauren looked at her children with pride. Your father and I are not together romantically, and we never will be. That chapter is closed. But we are a family, a different kind of family. One built on growth, responsibility, and respect. Jason wiped a tear silently. Matthew asked, Did you forgive him? Lauren smiled gently. Forgiveness isn't a one-time event, it's a process. And yes, I did forgive him. Not for the sake of the past, but for the sake of the future. Jason looked up, meeting her eyes. It wasn't longing. It wasn't a plea. It was gratitude. He turned to the children. The biggest lesson I want you to learn from my mistakes is this. Growth matters more than perfection. You will fail sometimes, but you must learn. You must evolve. You must take accountability. Life will give you chances to become better. Don't run from them the way I once did. Mia whispered, We won't. Lauren touched her daughter's cheek. Good. Because you come from strength. Then she looked at all three children. And I want you to understand one more thing. You don't need your parents to be together to feel whole. What you need is honesty, stability, and love. Everything else is just noise. The triplets nodded slowly, the depth of her words settling into their young hearts. Madison crawled onto Jason's lap. I'm glad you're our dad. Jason's breath broke. I'm glad too. Matthew leaned into Lauren's side. Mia placed her hand on Jason's shoulder gently. Her version of emotional closeness. The family of five sat together in a quiet circle, a moment years in the making. Lauren exhaled softly. This is our story. Not perfect, not traditional, but ours. Jason nodded. And I'm grateful for every part of it. The children smiled, each understanding in their own way that families don't need to look like fairy tales to be real. They only need honesty, effort, respect, and growth. Later that night, as Jason walked toward his car, he paused. Lauren stood on the porch, arms crossed lightly, watching the children clean up inside. Thank you, he said softly. She nodded. You earned this chapter. Jason smiled, not with hope of a romantic future, but with peace. Take care, Lauren. You too, Jason. He walked away with a heart no longer burdened by regret, just humbled, healed, and full of purpose. Lauren stepped inside, watching her children laugh as they folded blankets. Her voice echoed in her mind. Growth is greater than perfection. Dignity is greater than reunion. Healing is greater than heartbreak. Her story didn't end with a reunion. It ended with wisdom. And that was far more powerful. Before you go, family, please like, comment, and subscribe to Mr. Gerald Family. Tell us in the comments, do you believe people can grow after making life-changing mistakes? Your engagement helps us share more powerful stories with life lessons that matter.